We are back, everyone. Welcome back to the show. My audio sounds interesting on my side. I think it's just on my side though, so it should. I imagine everyone else. Let me know. Tell me mic sucks if it's bad or sound sucks or whatever. Trying a new background, by the way. Check out those hexagons in the background. Shout out to Canva.com or .io, whatever it is. They were fantastic. Today we're back. What I do on my vacation, I'll tell you a lot about it later. But just got finished clipping all of Richard's vintage videos. Sent out the tweet. Weeks of it's got to be 55, right? Vintage RH Throwback Thursdays. And Jesse in the green room let me know that PowerCity has Throwback Thursdays on their channel as well. So we'll have to I'll check that out and get into it. But I'm feeling. I had enough caffeine. I'm feeling good right now. But just got back again from doing a bunch of stuff, working on some projects. If you all seen the MaxiDAO mashup, very proud of that. That was really fun to do. And then, clip the RH videos, and I'll elaborate more about it later. I'll have Food Refinance on sometime, or I'll go on his show. We'll talk about the shorts and things that are coming up for that. The community is exploding in a good way, not imploding, exploding. Hex price is up. Things are going good. PulseChain, one day closer, isn't it? And today, I've heard a little bit about this. I need to catch up myself, but PowerCity apparently is doing some staking or loans or otherwise on PLSX and on PulseX. And we're going to talk about that with Jesse, as well as some MakerDAO stuff and maybe some strategies around PowerCity, liquid loans, all that good stuff. Bridges. I love to talk about bridges. Love to get into technicals with Jesse because he's got his ears to the ground. He can actually understand and explain some of these concepts. So love to have people like that on the show. Say hi to the chat real quick before we bring Jesse in. What's up, Compassion? Good to see you, man. Hope to see you at the next event. The local hexagons around here tend to do some cool events. Scott, there you go. I'm glad people are getting notifications. I feel like a lot of people go back and watch the stream later, and I don't think it's the timing thing. I think it's a lot of notifications aren't on, or they're just not around when it comes. So either way, good to have you. Without further ado, let's bring it back to the show for the third time, I believe, third or fourth one. JustAskJesse, welcome back.
How you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good. I told you that I am. I think you said you've been on the phone for a while. You've been on the phone all day working on some stuff, and I'm in a similar boat.
Yeah, it's been a long day. It's been a long day.
I'm glad you could come on and help me in my day as well with some good stuff. Hopefully your brain's ready. So we have some questions, and we love to get technical here. And I just want to get into it. I don't think I understand enough about. I've had some time. I went through some of the tweets. I watched a couple of you on stream talking about it. But what exactly is PowerCity doing with PulseX, with Earn? Is it similar? Like, how different is it with what Liquid Loans is doing with PulseChain? Can you just kind of give us an understanding about it?
Yeah. So Liquid Loans uses the Liquidity code, and we also use the Liquidity code. And it allows you, it's called Earn Protocol. It's got a cool acronym behind it, Enhanced Autonomous Rewards Network. And those who wish to not sell their PulseX and still realize some value out of that can mint some stable coins. And they can manage their collateral health. They can withdraw, they can top up their collateral, they can mint some stable coins, they can pay back stable coins. And then there's some other cool mechanisms in the protocol where people can stake their PXDC stablecoin into a stability pool for a chance at any liquidated PulseX to come their way. And then also they're incentivized to be in that pool through a release schedule of Earn tokens, EARN tokens. When you stake those things in the staking pool, you get all the fees in the protocol. This is a zero interest loan that people can take to mint stable coins, but there is a borrowing fee. That borrowing fee gets flows right over to the stakers of the Earn token. So those guys and gals are constantly collecting more and more stable coins just for staking Earn tokens. They're also on occasion earning some PulseX, because when there's redemptions in the protocol, which is a really cool mechanism, by the way, it's one of the key things that keeps the tokens stable. Actually, the stable coin stable. but those stakers are receiving PulseX whenever there's a redemption. So you can stake your stablecoin for some earn tokens and some PulseX. You can stake your earn tokens for some PulseX and some PXDC. It's just really neat. It's very similar to liquid loans, but now people with PulseX get to play the same game. And that does provide value to the chain, by the way. So on thriving chains, you want to see more than one native stablecoin. Bridged in things that are wrapped have risks associated with them, right? So USDC, for example, has its own counterparty risk. It's controlled by Circle. It can be shut off, right? Well, when you bridge that in from another chain, and it's now a wrapped thing, a wrapped USDC, you just introduced even more risk, and that risk is where's the backing for that stablecoin? Well, it's in the pool. It's in the bridge pool. So if something goes wrong there, the USDC would go to zero, right? If a bridge gets hacked, if a team withdraws the original USDC that was in the pool, that's when the wrapped USDC that's usually redeemable back in the pool no longer is redeemable, so there's a bank run, right? So there's all sorts of risks with just bridging in stable coins and thinking that PulseChain is going to be perfect. That includes DAI, which has its own risks. So on a blockchain, you want to have native minted stable coins that don't have the counterparty risk back at Circle or a big organization, that also don't have the counterparty risk of a bridge. They have multiple ways to arbitrage, so you can redeem it back for $1. That helps. That's actually what keeps it at its peg. But when you have multiple native stable coins that can also be traded back and forth, now you have this constant, somebody sells, but then somebody buys it back because they get more of the other one. And now you have multiple stable coins all keeping each other stable through their own arbitrage from their redemptions, but also from their own trading back and forth. That's the whole reason why Curve exists on Ethereum chain, to pair all these things together, keep them all stable to each other. So we want that on PulseChain, multiples. And now people can mint their stable coins off of their PulseX the similar way they can mint their USDL off of their Pulse.
Yeah, and what is the difference? Because you mentioned 0% of fees or interest. Is that what it was? What is the difference? Do you just need to over collateralize like you do with PulseChain, or what is?
Same way. Same. So you bring in some value, and you can mint value against the value that you brought in, right? So you have a minimum ratio that you have to have, and that's 110%. So you could put in, 110% of the value of what you're about to mint. But of course, if the price moves against you, you're going to lose that PulseX, for example, right? You open yourself up to liquidation. That's a scary word for a lot of people, by the way. And I do want to explain the difference of liquidations on a central exchange versus liquidations on something like an over collateralized debt position, an ODP, or a collateralized debt position, also called a CDP. That's what this is, a CDP. So liquidations perform differently on an exchange when you're leverage trading. Okay, so here's a scenario. Let's say you go off to KuCoin or something, and you open a long position with BTC and BUSD, and you leverage $1,000 that you have in your account balance, and you do a 20x leverage position. All right, so you have $1,000, you lever at 20x, and now you're trading with $20,000 worth of value. But if the price of BTC drops by only 5%, your account balance gets wiped out. You lose your $1,000, and you also lose the 20,000 you were playing with. It's gone, right? Your position's just literally closed. So what they gave you to trade with is gone, and what you initially started with is also gone. You're completely liquidated. You lost all your money, all the money you brought to the table. All right. And you lost it very easily because you levered up, and a 5% move in that scenario, you lost everything. Now, that's extremely different from how stablecoins like LUSD or even DAI or USDL or PulseX dollar coin are generated. So let's say that you put up 20, here it's kind of inverse of that. So let's say you want to put up $20,000 for the PulseX and you mint yourself 1,000 PXDC. So you can actually sustain the direct inverse of what happened on the exchange. Now you can sustain a 95% market drop, right? Before, the value of what you put in there is worth nearly the value of what you're running around with already, right? So only if and when the value of your collateral falls, like right there, the value of your stable coins, would you ever lose? But you have that value already. You secured that, you locked that in. You didn't lose the same way you did on an exchange. Another scenario could be, what if you put up $20,000 with the PulseX and you mint yourself 16,000 stable coins? What happens if the market drops 95% then? Well, you'd actually get liquidated at $16,000, but you have $16,000 worth of stable coins. And because it does a 95% drop, it's even better than if you were holding, because that 20 grand you put in goes all the way down, way down to $1,000 worth of value, but you have 16,000 in your hand. You minted those at the very start. Okay. So it's not the same. You actually get all the value that you're looking for right at the start, where on a central exchange liquidation mechanism, you give them the value and then they just take it from you, right? And there's scam wicks and all sorts of stuff that they use to just take all your money from you. It is not the same thing. It's kind of like a HELOC. You get to use your value against your thing. So you have something of value, but you actually get to have a loan and use some of that value for other things in life. And when managed properly, it's really like you can have your cake and you can eat it too. So, what if PulseX does a 10,000x? Okay. And you had collateralized and you had minted stablecoins the whole way. Okay. So not only did you get to keep all your PulseX because you didn't sell it, but it feels like you're getting value out along the way because you're minting stablecoins the whole time it's going up in value. Oh. So there's major benefits. There's a difference between bad debt and good debt. Bad debt is when you have no money and you need to go get a loan from a bank or a payday place, and you need money just to survive, and then you pay those guys. You become their investment vehicle. And they're using you to extract value because you're going to pay them in interest, forever until your loan's paid back, right? So you actually have less than you started with. You're using their money, and you put yourself in the cycle of constantly being in debt. But that's very different than if you already have something of value, whether that's a house, you could do a HELOC against it, or a 401k, you could take a loan out against your own thing, or it's crypto, you could take a loan out against your you could take a loan out against your ETH for LUSD. You could take a loan out against your ETH for DAI. You could take out a loan against your Pulse for USDL, a loan out against your your PulseX for PXDC. That is good debt. You're putting your money to work for you, because otherwise the only temptation is to sell. And it really sucks to sell, by the way. You have $20,000, okay? I have $20,000. You know what happens if the price goes up a lot? Let's say it goes through 10 doublings, because Richard talks about that all the time. You could have sold on a double, sold on a double, sold on a double, all that, right? Well, if you had 20 grand and you just hodled it until it did its first 2x, and then you said, oh, sweet, I'm double up on my money. So you sell half your bag. Now you have a free position, and that's a cool narrative. Hey, I have a free position. It didn't cost me anything because I already extracted my initial. Cool. Congratulations. And you keep doing that over and over and over. And you do that through 10 doublings as the price goes up and down. Oh, I hit another doubling. So you sell half your bag again. Goes through another doubling. You sell half your bag again. And then after 10 doublings, you have $220,000 worth of value. Congratulations. You turned 20,000 into 220,000. You're very proud of that. You go to all your friends and you say, wow, this PulseX thing or this Pulse thing, I made a whole bunch of money on it. I more than 10x my value, and I sold the whole way up. I DCA'd out. I sold on a double, sold on a double, sold on a double, all that, right? But then when you call me and you try and tell me the same story, I go, oh, why'd you do that, man? Because you could have held the same time. You know how much you'd have if you held? Come on, right off the top of your head. How much would you have? 20,480,000.
Like 2 or 20 million, one of those. Yeah.
Right. Because you would have held 20 grand until it turned into 40 grand, and that would turn into 80 and 160, 320. Right. And eventually it would be, if you're holding PulseX, it would be $20,480,000 for the PulseX. But that's super hard for people to do mentally. So with Hex, like it was easier for people to hold through because you stake it and you can't sell it, right? So the early participants and even the current participants, they'll experience it in the future, but those people are not selling, and that whole narrative saving you from yourself, there's some truth to that, where if the thing keeps going up in value, you can't sell and dump your bags. So how do you have that same mechanism for Pulse or PulseX? Well, you can't really replicate Hex with it, but what you can do is give people a mechanism that locks it up, which is good for the price, and they can extract value without having to sell along the way. It really sucks to sell, by the way. That same 10 doublings that we went through in that scenario was actually 10 halvings of your coin count. And that's why such the big difference of 220,000 that you have versus 20,480,000 that I have, because each time you sold, you have the quantity of tokens that you had. So if we started with a million tokens a piece, I think it would be like you'd have like 900 some thousand or 900 tokens left, somewhere in there, where I still have my original million. And I'm experiencing the gains on all of those million. All right. So that's why, without even talking about loans, that's why you don't want to sell with something that's likely to appreciate over a long period of time. The people who say, oh, DCA out. Well, that sucks. Looking back, the people who DCA'd out of Bitcoin are kicking themselves. Why'd they DCA out in the first few years of Bitcoin when it did a 6 million X, right? They could have been holding the same amount of Bitcoin today that they first had back in 2008 or 10 or whatever, right? So that's what you're looking for. Now, here we are with a brand new blockchain where the prices are likely to be the lowest at the start. Maybe there's a dip initially or whatever, right? But hopefully what we see is years from now, the value of all these tokens, Hex, Pulse, PulseX, right, are all way, way higher than at the start. So do you really want to DCA out? Or do you want this option where you can say, man, I've got $1 million worth of value. I'm super tempted to sell my bags. But wait a minute. Why don't I just collateralize this instead? And I take a loan out against my own asset, right? Now you have that value that you were craving. You can go do the things that you wanted to. Or if you didn't need that money, you just stake it. You stake it into the stability pool. And if you want to pay back your loan, go ahead, unstake from the stability pool and go pay back your loan.
So there is an actual time locking in the protocol, right?
No, not in Earn protocol.
So the incentivization of you not,
there's no time lock there.
Right. So the incentivization of you not taking the loan, not wanting to sell it, is that if you stake it, then you're earning yield. So that encourage you not to sell it anyways because you're making yield, right? That's kind of like the reason you wouldn't want to sell. And it's not time locking, but it's just this pushing you in the direction of no, don't sell. Yeah, making yield. Why would I sell? I'm making yield. Okay.
Right.
Clarify
and
that.
there's a lot of questions people have along the way, like, well, what if somebody gets liquidated? Doesn't that cause sell pressure? Well, not exactly. Not in this protocol, not the way you think, because actually liquidations in this protocol are instant and it gets spread across the community of stability providers. So all those guys get just a little piece of PulseX. You're not going to see a guy race off to PulseX to go dump the dollar he just made from a liquidation, right? Or the $5 he just made from a guy getting liquidated. So alternatively, there are protocols like DAI where one guy captures all the liquidation, and maybe that's a big amount, and then he dumps it all, right? So it's different in mechanics on how a liquidation happens, how it relieves some of the sell pressure by spreading it across the community. There's like some anti-will manipulation mechanisms in it. It's really hard for first off, there's time weighted and time volume averages for the price. So if a whale wanted to manipulate like the collateral, let's say the collateral is PulseX, if he wanted to manipulate that and hold the price down, he's dumping his own bags to do that. And our thing is looking across a number of liquidity pools, and it's time weighting averaging all of them, right? So that guy has to hold the price down while he's getting eaten up by people buying it up. So he's trying to wick the price down and hold it down for 30 minutes. And he's just giving away all his PulseX. He's just dumping the price on himself. Okay. But for what gain? Because what if there's only one vault that's down there by the liquidation point anyway? What if there's only 2 vaults down there, right down by the 110% mark? What if everyone else does the right thing and they collateralize safely at 200, 300, 400%? Okay. So what? He's going to liquidate a little guy, of his, couple $1,000 worth of PulseX, and he's going to gain that. He's not even going to gain it because it's going to get spread across the stability pool. Maybe that whale is only one guy in there. But oh, by the way, the only way he got his stable coins to participate in there anyway is he had to probably collateralize at some point, or he had to buy those on the open market. So all he's doing is dumping his own bags to gain a little fraction of some smaller guy's bag. He literally wrecks himself trying it. So so there are imaginary horribles that have all been thought about. And that's the reason why LUSD over on ETH chain is the most stable coin on the entire Ethereum chain through all market conditions. It just stays at $1. It pegs itself back to $1 because it's got a guaranteed redemption mechanism from the protocol. You can always, so in Earn protocol, you can always redeem one PulseX dollar coin for $1 worth of PulseX. And it actually just grabs that from the lowest collateralized vault because it's raising that guy's collateral health when it does that. It's paying off some of that guy's debt. And yes, it's giving you some of his collateral, but it's not liquidating that guy. It's actually helping him by paying off some of his debt for him. And it raises his collateral health. It's actually really cool how a redemption works. It pegs the price back to $1. It raises the collateral health of the entire ecosystem. It's beautiful.
Got a question from HEXMax here. How does the loan get paid back? What are the options?
Yep. So you can always bring back so whatever stable coins you mint, right? You can just bring those back and pay off your debt. You can do that in pieces. There's no monthly payment that's required. There's a one-time fee at the beginning that goes to the stakers, but you just have to bring them back all at once or bit by bit. The other way you can get paid back is through a redemption. If you're like the lowest guy on the totem pole and some other guy decides to run a redemption, which isn't all the time, but if somebody chooses to do a redemption, you could just see your loan get paid back for you, right? And leave you with the excess collateral that's yours, that excess PulseX. You just look and you're like, oh, my debt got paid for me. Oh, cool.
How does that work again? How does the debt get paid for you?
So, okay. So you have all these people who have debt positions all the way from 110% collateral health up to whatever, right? You'll see people with like 5,000% collateral, right? Because people are just want to be uber safe, and they just love their PulseX coins so much. And they'd rather sustain like a 99% dip and still have their coins, which is a little weird. Most people would like to sell the top, but some people just want to keep those coins even through the biggest of dips, right? So you'll see people that have collateral health at 110 all the way up to whatever. Now, when no stable coins are actually stable just because you say they're going to be stable. They're stable because when somebody dumps one, and this includes USDC, if somebody dumps USDC in the ETH pool, like USDC paired to ETH, somebody dumps a bunch, the price of USDC actually moves because you just changed the ratio. So you took ETH out and there's more USDC in. That USDC, at least on chain, is deriving its value from the ETH on the other side of the pool. So USDC can go from $1 worth of ETH to 95 cents worth of ETH, sometimes lower. All right. Now, somebody has to buy that and bring the price back up. But you have to have a mechanism to convince people to want to buy it back up to $1. So with USDC, Circle tells you that for each stablecoin, they're going to give you $1 worth of fiat if you wish to sell it, right? So there's that arbitrage, where if the value of USDC on chain falls below $1, I say, oh, wow, cheap USDC. 2 seconds from now, after I buy this, I could just redeem it back to Coinbase and get $1 for it, right? So I buy it back up to $1 in the ETH pool, and I complete the arbitrage and I make some profits. Whenever somebody sells, I buy it back. I make the slippage that they lost, I gain, okay, by buying it back. All right. You have to have that redemption mechanism. So with LUSD in the Liquidity protocol, that redemption mechanism is back to the protocol itself. You can always get $1 worth of ETH for it. In Earn protocol, PulseX dollar coin is always directly redeemable for $1 worth of PulseX. Where does it get that? So if the price if somebody dumps PulseX dollar coin and it drops, off of $1, you're going to see bots. You're going to see people are going to write bots, and it's going to get bought back immediately. Why? Because it's cheap. Because it's less than $1. And the person who owns that bot or the person who hit that button knows that it can get $1 worth of pulse for that whenever it wants to, at any time. It can do it right then. It can wait a month. It can wait a year. But at any time, it can get $1 worth of PulseX for that PulseX dollar coin. So it just bought it at a discount. And where does it get that PulseX? What the protocol does is it looks at the lowest collateralized vault. And it says to itself, basically, wow, how do we raise the collateral health of this system and create this entire loop where anybody can mint and anybody can pay back? Well, the payback mechanism through redemption pays back the lowest collateralized vault. So when somebody chooses to do a redemption, it goes to the lowest collateralized vault and it pays that guy's loan back, equal proportional to the amount that's being redeemed. And it gives that amount of collateral to the guy who clicked the redeem button. And it raises that guy's collateral health, right? So let me give an example of that. Let's say the lowest collateralized vault happens to be 200%. What if everyone's choosing to be really safe and it's like 200%? So you have a guy that has like $5,000 worth of collateral. And he's got $2,500 worth of stablecoin that he minted. All right. So 5,000 divided by 2,500 would say he's at a 200% collateral health. But what happens if somebody redeems $1,000 worth of, 1,000 stable coins? Well, it's going to go to that lowest collateralized vault that has $2,500 worth of debt, and it's going to pay 1,000 of that off. So it's going to pay 1,000 of that off, right? So now the guy's debt is only 1,500, but it also took $4,000 worth of PulseX from him. So it had to take it proportionally. It gave $1,000 worth of PulseX to the redeemer. It closed out $1,000 worth of debt. So now the guy has $4,000 worth of collateral divided by 1,500. Wow. His collateral health just shot up to 266%, because 4,000 divided by 1,500 is 2.66. That's 266%. You just saved that guy who may have already spent his stable coins. Maybe he wanted to pay his loan back. It doesn't matter. He was the lowest collateralized guy, and you just raised his collateral health by paying his debt back for him. And you completed an arbitrage, and you pegged the price back to $1, and it closed this whole closed loop system.
Wow. So why you'd be incentivized to do that? No, that's really an interesting outcome. So you arbitrage, you get that gain, and then you can also incidentally pay off other people's loans in the system.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. Anybody can mint, and you can pay back your own loan. But if you're the lowest, from the bottom up, other people, can actually pay back your loan too for you and raise your collateral health. If there's redemptions being run, redemptions aren't run all the time, by the way, because like I said earlier, in a perfect world, there's other arbitrage opportunities like stable coins paired to stables, right? So people are just trading back and forth there and just accumulating or whatever. From when somebody sells and needs some slippage, the next guy buys and he gains that slippage, right? So redemptions literally don't have to happen all the time. But if necessary, or if somebody wants to, right, what pegs this thing back to $1 and guarantees that is that there is a redemption mechanism.
Gotcha. The follow-up from HEXMax and yeah, non-tax advisors. Anything you want to say on this?
Yeah, so not tax advice, right? Typically, loans, at least from central institutions, are not taxed, right? So you go to a bank, you get a loan. You don't pay taxes on that. You swipe a credit card, you don't pay taxes on that. You take a loan out against your home, you don't pay taxes on that money, right? You actually have, you're going to pay that back at some point. How do you pay taxes on something that you might have to pay back or might want to pay back? How do you pay taxes on something, even a loan you met yourself, if you haven't sold your original asset? Where was the gain? Did you sell your original asset and have a capital gain? No, it's still sitting in there, right? So the laws are not clear on crypto loans, but the laws are very clear on loans in general. Put the word crypto in front of them and then go talk to a tax advisor.
Solid advice right there. Solid not advice right there. So I want to talk to the chat for a second. We'll go on. What's up, bullish? No, I've highlighted all the stuff. No, stop highlighting. Okay. Welcome, Thomas. Good evening from Czech. Wow, I've been to Czech. It's been a while. I've been to Prague. Beautiful city. Beautiful city. Benny Blanco. Just looking around for questions. Somebody had a question earlier too that I wanted to see if we can get to. Yeah, once we move. Okay, I'll throw it up there right now. Okay, please explain parity on both chains. Is this something you talked about before, or is he referencing? You talked about the parity.
Parity on both chains. I don't believe that there's going to be parity across both chains. So completely independent mechanics, right? So when you really look at where tokens derive their value from, a lot of the value is coming from the thing. Well, it always comes from the thing it's paired to, right? So Hex on Ethereum chain primarily paired to USDC. So the USDC is that reference to what that Hex is worth. Okay. And there's a number of factors that affect that. And there's pairings to ETH as well. ETH has its own price performance. There's all sorts of arbitrage opportunities that are happening all over the place. And if ETH goes up in price, pretty much everything else on the Ethereum chain goes up in price with it because everything's paired to it. So now you have PulseChain that's completely independent of that, right? And it has its own mechanics. It has its own There's buy and burns and PulseX. There's all sorts of stuff going on ETH chain. They have nothing at all to do with PulseChain. And then you have hex that's paired to things on each chain. Where's the parity happen? Parity only really happens when there's an arbitrage, like I explained earlier, where there's a guarantee you'll get a 1-for-1. Look, the supply differences for even things like hex are going to be completely different across the two chains. They'll start at the same thing, but then as the staking behaviors are different across the two chains, the total supply will be different. The liquidity pool and those depths will be completely different. ETH might shoot up in price one day and PulseChain stays stagnant, or vice versa, right? So you can't really say you're going to pair those two things together through a bridge, which does have risks, by the way, bridge risks. Pair those two things together and just say that they're going to stay the same price. And some people have said, well, what happens if, a benevolent actor comes in with just tons of tokens and makes the liquidity depth so thick that, they just it's hard for them to move against each other. Well, there's really no incentive for a guy to do that, because you actually do want different performance on ETH chain or on PulseChain, right? If PulseChain's the premier chain, Richard Hart founded it, and he wants it to perform better than ETH, and he wants hex and everything on it to perform very well. Why would you link the two together through super thick liquidity pools, right? And just try and make it so hex is just the same price across the two chains? Why would you even do that? Why do you, what's the point? And it's a constant moving target because of the different supply differences and all that. Right. So it's just one more thing a guy has to manage to try and provide exit liquidity back to ETH chain, or exit liquidity from ETH chain back to PulseChain. And it gets super impossible to manage. And there's just why would you do it? It's ridiculous.
Well, if the OA didn't make any moves, what would they make, you think?
Yeah, I think
it's not parity, then what?
I think they'll be paired together, but I don't necessarily think you'll see the same price. One on one chain may be a different price than the other, and people are going to have to figure that part out, like which one is worth more, right? Let's look at the total supply. Let's look at the staking behaviors over here. When are stakes coming out? Are these typical stakers that are coming out? Are they typical dumpers, or are these guys that like to restake? Those behaviors will end up being different on the two chains, right? So that tells me the prices are also going to be different. People are going to sell on one chain at different times than selling on the other chain.
Get ready to update those stats websites. A lot of good stats websites are going to need to support Pulse now. But that's a great point. It's something that, why would they, maybe, especially if they favor one chain or the other, such as PulseChain, maybe they want a higher price. Interesting to see. Going through chat, I got a couple more questions in here. What about, let's see, where's the one from? Sorry, chat. You guys are.
Somebody has a good question here. I see it.
Which one?
Say we're using PortalX, and you're using, it's using a bridge that PortalX routes through at the same time that gets hacked. What happens then? Well, when you do, okay, so let's talk about what happens in a bridge hack. So the way cross-chain bridges work is you have a token on one chain, say an ERC20, and you want to go to another chain. That ERC20 goes into a pool, and that pool is it's always owned by the team. There's admin keys. They have access to that money. Okay. And their smart contracts will mint you the same token with the same ticker on the chain you're going to. And people like to call that a wrapped token. It's not really wrapped. It's just redeemable. That thing that was just minted can always be brought back, and it burns itself out of existence. And then out of that pool releases the thing that the team has locked up. Right. So in a bridge hack, here's what a bridge hack looks like. Somebody finds the keys, somebody drains the money. Somebody drains those tokens that are in the pool. So now anything that was a representation of that on the new chain is no longer redeemable. because they're gone. The original tokens are gone. Whether somebody hacked it or somebody stole it, those tokens are gone, right? So the tokens that people are trading with, it's like, oh crap, these things, like there's literally a bank run that happens when people go, oh shit, I won't be able to get back the thing that's supplying the value to this. The arbitrage opportunity is gone. It's out the window. So now I'm left with this token and everyone starts selling out of it. And that thing goes to zero. That's what happens during a bridge hack. And the team or the hacker or whatever is laughing, and he's running around with the original ERC20 tokens that he grabbed out of that wallet, out of that pool. All right. Now, the way an aggregator works is it just finds you the best route for your trade, and it'll swap, and it'll go through a bridge, and then it'll swap again into the thing you're looking for. So you can actually not use the wrapped token as your last ending point. You can say, well, I've got this thing on ETH chain, I've got link token, and I want earn token over on PulseChain. Okay, what's going to happen is it's going to show you a trade route, several trade routes. It's going to swap your link for maybe some wrapped pulse. It's going to take that back to the bridge, or it's going to take your ETH into the bridge, and then it's going to wrap it, and then it's going to swap that into whatever and swap that into earn. And it's going to do that. And if the whole entire trade cannot be executed from start to finish, it fails. And you still have your original thing. So if the thing gets hacked in the middle of it, where all those tokens get like drained, first off, it's depositing into the pool to begin with and then minting you the other thing, right? So like that's a little bit irrelevant, but it's your entire list of order of operations of what's happening from start to finish. Every single step of that along the way has to get filled. And only if all of them are able to get filled will the entire trade actually execute. So it's a little bit of an imaginary horrible in this standpoint. And you get left with something that's not, the wrapped bridge thing. So you're not exposed to that. What happens if a bridge gets hacked? Well, you have an original asset on the chain you're trying to go to now. So now you minimize that risk as well. And if there happens to be a bridge out there that goes down, remember I said it's going to find you a list of trade routes to get into the chain you're trying to go to? Well, that one will just not be available. You'll see other options to get into the chain you're trying to go to. Or worst case scenario, if every bridge out there gets hacked, well, you just won't see any options to get into the chain. You'll have to wait. Right. But our thing, we don't have any tokens. We don't have your keys or coins. You have your keys or coins. And our thing is just looking for the best route to get in.
Gotcha. Coinbase Black Swan, says Orion. Is that a question?
I don't know.
Coinbase down again? I don't know. Scrolling through chat, and we'll could get a couple more before we wrap up. This has been fantastic, Jesse. A lot of people have a lot of questions we can't get to, unfortunately, but here we go.
Yeah. And by the way, our aggregator has fees, as you would expect. If you're going to go through a bridge or do even some same chain aggregation, right? You want to find the best trade, right? You could go straight to PulseX, cool, and you find your token pairing and you do a swap, okay? But does that mean you're going to get the best deal and end up with the most coins at the end of your trade? No. But if you use an aggregator and it's searching through all the available liquidity and it's executing that, you could end up with more coins by using an aggregator. That's why things like 1inch and Matcha and so on and so forth exist. There's a fee to use those things, right? And there's a fee to use our things. And the fees flow to the community of stakers of the Watt token. Isn't that beautiful? Community run, community collects the fees. Amazing.
CJ said, my God, the value in this is insane. I'm not sure which part he was talking about, but it sounds like he's talking about PowerCity. Mike asks, what are other choices besides Coinbase? It's actually, there's a lot of people who only use Coinbase. So what else could we use out there besides them?
Well, you could when PulseChain goes live, you can use Coast, to off ramp, and there is True USD that you can exit with. True USD is unique. Actually, Coast is a little bit modeled off of True USD, actually. But True USD, you go to their platform and you link your bank account to it. And whenever you do a wire transfer into your True USD account, their system will mint you TUSD tokens into your wallet that you told them, right? It'll just do that automatically. So whenever you're like, oh, I got some money, let me wire it to my True USD bank account. And then, within a couple hours or whatever, you've got the same quantity of TUSD in your Ethereum wallet, and you can go do whatever you want with that. And it's the reverse of that going out. So once you set up a TUSD account and you're like, well, I want to get value out, you just go to Curve or Uniswap. I suggest Curve. Go to Curve, pick up some TUSD, send that to your TUSD Ethereum address. And when it lands over there, what they're going to do is just that disappears, and their banking system will send you an escrow payment, a wire transfer that's labeled as an escrow payment, straight to your chosen bank account. Right. So it's just automatic. You're like, oh, I want to get some value out of crypto. Send that to TUSD, within a few hours. Wow, your bank account just has some money that just popped up in it. So that's a really cool system. Of course, there's crypto.com, which may or may not be a little riskier than Coinbase, but there's only so many ways to get out. The most important thing to remember in crypto when using any centralized entity is only use it briefly and don't put your whole bag through it. Right? If you're trying to get $1 million out, don't send $1 million to any place. Don't send $1 million to Coinbase. Send like $50,000 at a time. I know it'll take you a whole bunch of 20 times, but send 50 grand at a time, several, throughout the day, and then do those wire transfers out to your bank account. Because what happens if you do send it all at once and it all gets stolen, or the exchange goes down, or, they get a lawsuit, or the SEC tells them to shut down, or whatever. Right. So just little bits at a time.
You have a test address people can send their little bits at a time for? You got one you want to put in the chat? test ETH address to send 50K at a time to Jesse, and you'll figure it out. Also on crypto.com, they have an arena. So, people's sports arenas, companies like that, they're usually trustworthy for years and years and years.
Somebody says when using PortalX, does the link get broken, therefore creating privacy? No, not really, because it's all on chain still, right? Even though it's using, even if you're going from one chain to another. And normally things that break the link, it's interesting, unless you keep it in there for a long time. Like if you use a mixer, you got to stay in there a long time, because you want other people with the same amount of value coming out. Right. So for example, any kind of mixing service, if you send, 10 grand into a mixer, and then 5 minutes later, you send 10 grand out to a different address, that's really easy to track, right? Because you can just look on chain and just watch that, the money coming into that pool, and then watch the same amount of money coming out of that pool. And you can say, yep, those two wallets. Now you know who that person is, right? You can actually do the same with exchange wallets. It's a little bit harder, but if somebody tries to bounce 10 grand off of like Binance or something, and within 5 or 10 minutes, somebody sends 10 grand worth of a different something else out of Binance, you can assume, not 100% certain, but you can assume that, wow, that might be the same person, even though it's two different addresses. You looked at the Binance 10 wallet or whatever, and you said, okay, it went into the Binance receiving hot wallet, and then out of this other wallet, the same amount came back out in a different token even, right? And you can say, well, that's probably the same guy. So no, aggregators and even central exchanges cannot guarantee anonymity. You have to be careful.
With PortalX and Liquid Loans 2, just want to answer this community question briefly. stake, earn yield, lock up coins. I guess, is there like just 1, 2, 3 ways that you can just not, it's just over collateralizing? How can you just not risk your bags? Is it just collateralizing enough, or is there just a couple things you can do?
Risking the value or risking the token count?
I think risking, question was losing their bags. So interpret that
So
as
losing
you
the
like.
bags could be losing your value versus losing the token count. So
Sure.
we'll go through 2 scenarios, right? One guy doesn't want to lose his coin count, right? So he puts in 1,000% collateral. So he might put in $100,000 worth of PulseX and made a $10,000 loan. Okay, because he's deathly afraid. And now he can sustain a 90% market drop. Before, he would lose his collateral, right? So there you have a scenario where if the market doesn't drop 90%, and by the way, that's fully manageable. You can pay back, you can withdraw your excess collateral, you can top it up, all those things, right? So it's a moving target you can constantly manage. But if he sat there and did nothing, he could sustain a 90% market drop. Before he would lose his collateral because he already has that amount of value in stablecoins. All right. So compare that against the other guy who just collateralized at 300%. So that guy has, $100,000, but he minted himself $33,000. Okay, what happens if the market drops 90%? That guy wins, and he got liquidated sooner. And that's only if he did nothing at all. If he just walked away and didn't care. So one guy preserving his value by being less collateralized, the other guy preserving his coin count by being over collateralized. It's a very personal decision, and it's fully manageable.
That's the bag. So the bags were the number of tokens versus the value.
Yeah. So one is like let's look at the worst. Let's look at the most extreme scenario. What if somebody minted What if somebody put in $100,000 worth of PulseX and they minted $90,000 worth of stable coins? What if that PulseX does that same 90% drop that other guy that had 1,000% collateral had? That other guy put in $100,000. He only minted $10,000. Both guys did nothing. One guy got liquidated at $90,000. He has that money already. He's running around with $90,000. The other guy sat there and did nothing, and he only has $10,000. And maybe at the end of that drop, the guy with the $90,000 buys in, and he has a massively larger position in PulseX than the guy who wanted to retain his coin count. You could put yourself anywhere in that spectrum and fully manage it. You can be at 100%, 200%, 300, 4, 5, 6,000, 10,000% collateral. Put yourself wherever you want. The most important thing to realize is that if the value of your collateral falls to really close to the value you already have, that's when you lose your collateral because you already have that. It has to get liquidated. Otherwise, that stablecoin's no longer backed. That stablecoin's backed by the value you put in. So somebody else has to get that collateral and pay your debt for you because you chose to do nothing. So it really is a beautiful system, and people have to understand, like, are you trying to protect your coin count or are you trying to protect your coin value? Because there is a difference.
Yeah, instead of being your own bank, be your own loan officer with these protocols. Just wanted to throw, or put, I can't stop saying I just want to throw this up on the screen every time it makes me think of vomit. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put this up on the screen. Ivan on Tech and MakerDAO. And remember you had some comments on this. So can you just explain what happened here and what, does this change the way you think about DAI?
Yeah, no, it doesn't change. I've always hated DAI. I mean, it started out as like supposed to be decentralized, okay? Nothing that has governance can be decentralized for very long. So Circle has the majority of the Maker tokens. They did this strategically. Circle owns USDC. To gain a competitive advantage, they went ahead and bought the ever-living crap out of Maker tokens. They now own the controlling vote. So now the centralization that Circle likes, they can now start to put the squeeze and do the same things on DAI. Okay, so that's one risk with anything that has governance. By the way, governance is often a joke because with governance, yeah, everyone can vote, but all that means is now the founders get together and they say, "Hey, Dev, everyone voted. Go ahead and change the code." Okay, so now the guy goes in and he updates the code. Right, they run their own little private test net. Hopefully they got additional audits, and then they launch the code and upgrade the contracts or whatever. And now hopefully everyone's happy because everyone voted for that change to begin with. But somebody can literally access the code and change it is the central point of failure. It could actually happen without a vote. Just because everyone votes, look, that dev team can still go in there. If they were nefarious, they could just go change it right now if they wanted to. You don't actually need the vote for those guys to do that. You're just trusting that they're going to do the right thing and not make any changes unless everyone votes, right? So you do have multiple risks now with DAI. You have something that's not immutable because it has governance, but now you also have something that's highly centralized because it has governance. And then one of the other things I don't like about DAI is its liquidation mechanism absolutely sucks. When people mint DAI against their ETH, they put up ETH as collateral, they mint some DAI. They have to put themselves at 130% collateral health minimum. And then they can choose to over collateralize however much they want to go. But if their value falls to 130%, they get liquidated. They lose 30% of their bag. Okay. You don't see that with LUSD because it's 110% collateral health with LUSD. So the most you can ever lose in LUSD is 10% of your bag. And that's only if you're choosing to way under collateralize. Okay. So Maker during a liquidation wrecks people way more than it has to. But the reason it's like that is because of their auction process. So when something gets liquidated, when ETH gets liquidated in Maker protocol, it goes up for a 6-hour liquidation auction, and then people can choose to bid on that. But in a black swan event, you could literally see a scenario where nobody bids on it during that 6 hours and the price continues to go down. And if you see one vault become under collateralized, right? If the price of ETH drops 30% during that 6-hour window, you would actually see a vault or a number of vaults start to actually no longer back the value of DAI. So if DAI has a collateral health of like 300% right now, but the lowest collateralized vaults start to like go be literally under collateralized and nobody's buying that debt, you could see an event where DAI is no longer backed and everybody realizes that there's a problem because of the 6-hour liquidation window, and they start running to Uniswap to start dumping their DAI very quickly. And that's how these death spirals happen. All right. It's dangerous. And look, DAI is supposed to be really good. Like I used to really like it. It's like, oh, this thing is decentralized. Anybody can mint these things. It's cool. But when you start to get in the weeds of it, the 6-hour liquidation window is unnecessary and could actually present a scenario if ETH was to drop by 30%, where things start to become under collateralized. That is a risk. The other risk is Maker having the governance system that now Circle controls, and it's not immutable. They can just change the code at any time. And what does it say here? They even complied with a court order. Okay. And they took money back from a guy. It's bad. It's really bad. And LUSD from Liquidity, they recognized all this stuff years ago. And I've been shouting for like a year and a half now, maybe 2, that Liquidity is like DAI, but on steroids, it's much, much safer. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. 100% governance free, fully immutable, no admin keys. You can never change the code. Fully backed, fully redeemable at any time. The collateral health of the system is always going up. It's amazing. And then I see Richard Hart, and he, there's a wallet out there that holds a lot of DAI. And I almost lose some sleep over that. It bothers me a lot. What happens if this happens here? Some sort of court order, some sort of weird thing. The SEC doesn't like him or wants to do something. And then Maker just decides to fork him out. Like, fork you, Richard Hart. Look, they could do that to him. It's dangerous. Now, people say, well, look at LUSD. It doesn't have thick liquidity. It's its own liquidity pool. People need to understand, first off, there's Curve, and there's like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of liquidity, and all the stable coins are paired together, so anybody can get out. But people also need to understand that the liquidity system itself is a liquidity pool. Every single token that's minted can be redeemed back for $1 worth of ETH. So even if you go to Uniswap and you're like, oh, wow, there's only $20 million in here. Okay, cool. But if there's 150 million LUSD, there's actually $150 million worth of ETH that can be gotten back out of it. It's its own liquidity pool. So yes, you want to see big, thick liquidity everywhere, but that's only part of the picture.
Very interesting. Yeah, this is I wonder how many people will be switching out of DAI. I wonder if the SAC wallets will make any moves. Fork you, Richard Hart. That would be epic, though. I mean, it'd be bad, obviously, but epic if there was the Richard Hart fork of DAI, and with all the SAC stuff. So, assuming that's who has the SAC wallets, right? One more thing before we wrap up, we have to cover the PulseChain. The great PulseChain.com news. The great from Richard here. Devs beat the bug. They got to stage 9 complete in Aragon. This means the likely remaining metadata. Basically, stages will complete after stage 9. All the clients testing now. Totally be prepared for launch. And is this the machine that's got like 1 terabyte of RAM? It's crazy. Must be a lot of validators running on it. I imagine having that BP specs. Anyways, what do you think? Is this the update before testnet v3 launch? How do you see this?
Well, I mean, you always get the people who see any update they get from Richard, and they say, "Oh, PulseChain is going to launch within 24 hours. I heard it." Right? And okay, but then you get some other people, some really smart people in the community, like Gamma DevOps. Gamma, great guy, by the way. If you need nodes or you want to know about all this Aragon Pulse stuff, look, he's the guy to go to. He's got this stuff figured out. Anyway, you go to a guy like him, and he might say, "Oh, well, there's all these other steps that might have to be completed. It could be another 3 weeks to a month, but nobody knows, right?" So we don't know what's still left. So this is all the back end stuff. What about him relaunching his PulseX contracts? And he's got to point his front ends to all the right contract numbers, and they've got to test that, make sure it's all functional. Maybe he still has to run the FixerBot thing. Is the chain running enough where he could be just buying up all the liquidity now and doing the FixerBot process, or do we have to wait till the whole thing is complete? Right? I don't know. It could be tomorrow. It could be a month from now. Nobody knows. But it is cool to see updates because it gives us reassurances that, oh, cool, they're making progress. They're not just stuck, right? So I do like seeing updates, but that doesn't necessarily mean PulseChain's launching tomorrow.
Yeah, I would not bet money in 24 hours for sure, no matter what kind of tweets you see. But that's an interesting point, though, on the AMM bot. Is that fixed? Is it going to wait to do it in, like, is it going to be running in testnet v3? Or let's say it isn't, and then we have testnet v3, the public testnet v3, and then we have a private pre-launch. I don't know if you call it private v4 or something, where maybe AMM bot runs. I doubt they're going to just run it.
I think they've got that launch. I think they probably got all that figured out. Like I think we'll see testnet v3. let the community go play with it, try and break it, let the community spool up various validators so they know how to do it. You'll see guys who are spooling up nodes for graph and subgraph stuff that's pulling and scraping data from the chain. You'll see all sorts of dev teams that now actually can go in and figure out, okay, this is what, like, they figure out their whole process, right? You do want to give all those people time because that's your infrastructure. That's part of your infrastructure for a healthy chain. So, like, I don't think you'll see testnet v3 launch and then, like, the next day it's like mainnet. Some people believe that, but that's a little bit reckless. You want people to run all sorts of smart contracts through that thing and see if there's any other bugs or problems that weren't identified.
It almost fits too well into the plans of 2 more months and all that. Yeah, I definitely think that there'll be some time between launch and testnet v3. It just makes sense, right? People need to test stuff. It's like, why? If you're going to wait 23 months for something, why not wait 25, 26, whatever. Why does it matter? So very cool, man. Let me stop sharing here. Chat, I'm sorry. I know there's 100 of you, but I just we're going to wrap it up. We're actually over an hour now, but Jesse, it's been fantastic. Any what do you want to take us out on? Any final words? Any statements? Anything you want to get out there before we call it a night?
Yep. So the PowerCity team works tirelessly, day in and day out. Sometimes unlimited sleep, right? We have like this rotation going where people are always doing things. And we actually have some really cool tools and services for PulseChain, right? So check us out at PowerCity.io, Twitter, PowerCity.io on Telegram, and check out sacrificenow.io. Typically things go very well for people who have a common, common beliefs, right? Airdrops have to go to somewhere, right? So there may be an entity that looks at a set of wallet addresses and says, well, those are some cool wallet addresses. So come check out what we're doing. And we'll be having some Twitter spaces that we kind of do regularly. I think we took this last week off from Twitter Space, but you're going to see some more of these pop up where we just like to go and talk about everything PulseChain.
Very cool. Exciting times. Hex price be up. PulseChain dev updates have been happening. Community seems to be less imploding than it was before. Things seem to be better. So I took a vacation last week and worked the entire time. So awesome. Yeah. Good to have you, Jesse.
Price going up and everybody gets euphoric, right? We're really not that far away from our all-time high when you really think about it.
We're marching towards 8 cents, right? For the 7 cents, 8 cents. And then, I mean, I've seen a lot of TA stuff going on. I mean, everyone's coming out of the woodwork. I feel like it's there's momentum, which is that's cool. Momentum is a cool thing, and it's kind of the market psychology, right? Like more people, more excited. Right. Those people are probably buying. Those people are going to keep buying. They're going to wait, and it's all part of the market. So good to have you, man. Thanks again for coming on. Always a fantastic conversation with you. Learned a lot. I'm going to have to do the replay game myself. Everyone else out there, share the link, smash all the buttons, go follow Jesse at JustAskJesse on Twitter, and then at PowerCity.io for everything. I almost typed PulseCity.io. I was typing it out. I typed PulseCity, and the first time I had to correct it. PowerCity.io, very interesting products coming out. A whole suite of stuff. It's not just the PulseX staking, but there's Watt. There's just a whole bunch of different products. So very cool stuff. It looks like a very well put together team, and excited to see everything. And is there going to be? Oh yeah, I should ask this before we go. With testnet v3 coming out, will there be something for people to play with new?
Yeah, absolutely.
PowerCity
has to be. Yep. We are not launching without people playing with it, because we need their feedback, right? Even if it's small stuff, and look, we'll listen to whatever it has to say. I think people are going to be blown away with our interfaces. We put little sneak peeks out there and videos of what our stuff looks like. And when people start clicking around, I think they're going to have a really good time and enjoy what's actually happening behind behind these smart contracts they're making.
Amazing stuff. All right, everyone. I got 2 streams tomorrow, double header. The first one, I can't remember who it is. The second one is with Monero guy. Yeah, I'm gonna have another cross collaboration with Monero magazine gentleman, I believe. So that should be fun. And sorry, whoever I forgot that is tomorrow at 3:30, but it'll be a good one. It'll be a good one. Anyways, everyone, Scivive and 5555.